What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. As always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. I am the 2018 winner of the Innovation Award handed out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And this is the place for Epic Conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations. Just want to shout out that we are live streaming on Get Vocal. We are live streaming on YouTube, and we're also live streaming on Periscope, and we are audio live streaming on the Mixler platform. So there's 5 different ways or 5 different streams that this epic conversation is being put out to the world. So if you, as I say to everyone, when I'm on these epic conversations, hosting them, if I'm putting my head down because I have my tablet here, so I want to monitor what's going on a tablet. So I'm producing, hosting, and steering the ship in all real time. Let's make it happen. Another new friend to the Dr. Vibe show, home of epic conversations. She is a human trafficking advocate, public speaker, wellness educator, author, roadblock conqueror. Need to know what that is, and a dream chaser. Rhonelle Bruder is an inspiring force on a mission to help motivate and inspire vulnerable youth to discover the power within themselves, having overcome many traumatic experiences, including teenage homelessness, sexual exploitation, and poverty. She had to learn the strategies not only merely to survive, but to thrive despite her challenging circumstances. Her desire to support others to rise despite what obstacles they face led her to become the founder of the Rise Initiative, a program dedicated to helping vulnerable young people strengthen resilience, health, and well-being, and in the process, change the trajectory of their lives. She holds an Honours Bachelor of Science in Health Administration from New York City College of Technology and a Master of Science in Health Informatics graduate from the University of Victoria. Is that BC or Australia? I hope it's BC.
British Columbia, yes.
Okay. And most recently, her work has been featured on television, radio, newspapers, and online publications, including TVO's The Agenda, which is based in the province of Ontario, where we both live, with Steve Paikin, State of Mind Health podcast, Medium by Blacks and Blavity. She is with us tonight to talk about the Cyntoia, Brown, and R. Kelly cases and the state of human trafficking. Welcome to the Dr. Vibe show, home of epic conversations for the first time and not the last time, Ms. Rhonelle Bruder. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing good, and thank you for having me here.
Well, the pleasure is mine. I want to shout out to, not only to Melvin, to Sonia, to Kinte, to Jada, to Dre, to Tourist. What is up, everybody? Dre caught a quick bit of your show, so thank you so much, and I will be emailing you either tonight or tomorrow about having a conversation about Black male teachers in the public school system. That is coming up. It's going to be epic. But tonight is Rhonelle Bruder's night. And if you, as always, if you have questions or comments, please put them in on the Get Vocal platform. I'll be opening up the room in about 10 to 15 minutes because we want to get a little bit of Rhonelle's story to the audience out there. So Rhonelle, lovely bio, but we need to get a little bit more. So share a little bit about where you grew up, how life was, because it sounds like you had some challenges along the way. So share some of your journey.
Yes, I most certainly did. So I was born in the Caribbean. So I was born in an island called St. Vincent in the Caribbean, a really small island. I was adopted when I was 3 years old. And so I was adopted by a Canadian family. And so my parents are white, who I grew up with, in a small town about 2 hours away from Toronto. So a really small, suburban, conservative, very white town that I grew up in. So just growing up sort of in that circumstances, I was sort of being the other. I never fit in. So that was one of the things that I think for me growing up was not having that sense of belonging, not having that sense of feeling like you have a family, you know what I mean? Like you connect to something more than just yourself. And so I had some challenges growing up. And even though, you know, my parents, I loved them, they were great, they were both suffering from mental health issues. And as you know, when it comes to mental health illness, there's still a lot of stigma regarding it, but there was even more so, right? Like when you go back, there was even more stigma and there's not as much understanding. So there wasn't treatment, there wasn't the kind of care that we have today. And so growing up with that, my parents weren't able to provide the just sort of the parental supervision that I needed and sort of the help or anything like that. So it was a neglectful type of parenting, you know, sort of due to that mental health issues. And so I just started to sort of gravitate to anything and anyone that I felt would give me that sense of family and belonging. And so that sort of led me to leave home. So as a teenager, well, I started staying with friends, you know, so a lot of times when young people run away or they leave home, there's multiple attempts. So for me, you know, I left home, I stayed with friends for like a bit, and then I'd come back home, and then, you know, another blow up fight would happen, and I would leave again. And then eventually, finally, I left and I moved to Toronto to stay with friends. And that situation didn't work out as I thought it was going to. And so I ended up homeless. And so I found myself homeless in a city where I didn't know anybody.
What age was that, by the way?
Oh, yeah. So I left home officially when I was 16.
So you were homeless at 16 in Toronto?
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, you know, I was crashing at friends' house, crashing on couches and with friends and things like that. And then eventually found myself homeless when I didn't have a place to stay. So I used Covenant House. I'm very familiar with Covenant House. I'm sure even the American audience knows that too.
No. You educate them. You're making an assumption.
Okay. I'm making an assumption. All right. So Covenant House is an international nonprofit organization that provides shelter, multi-pronged services for vulnerable homeless youth. And so they'd have a shelter there. So I stayed within their shelter. I also used their food services, and they have food bank services. So I was a familiar face at Covenant House for a while, but sort of being on my own, not having that sense of protection and sense of family, I ended up connecting with a female, so a peer, who sort of led me into the road of human trafficking.
We could just spend the whole hour just what you shared.
Yes.
Let me ask, how was it growing up in a household with parents that were challenged by mental health?
Yeah, well, I think because, again, just because of the time due to the lack of education, we really didn't know what was going on. I just knew that they weren't present. But I didn't know how to sort of, you know, we didn't know how to articulate that or sort of speak to that because it just wasn't something that was talked about. But they just weren't present. You only know, right? So normal to you. It really wasn't until I started spending time with my other friends and going to my friends' houses that I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like my situation is not the same as everybody else's.
Wow. That is really, really challenging. There's so many conversation pieces. When was the lowest or the most challenging part of your journey up until 16, 17 years old? And how did you get out of it?
Yeah, I think for me, so being in Toronto, being on my own, not knowing anybody, and then having a situation where I just had nowhere to stay, and just that fear of not having a home, not having anywhere to go. I was fortunately, I knew street kids, like I just started to get to know all the street kids, and they were the ones that kind of directed me to Covenant House and go here, they'll feed you, they'll clothe you, you can get any medical help or anything that you need. But that is scary. It's a very vulnerable place to be as a young person. So
wow, out on the streets, 16 years old, sleeping at different places. Who were some key people that helped you get through during that time of your journey? Or were there key people? Were there any key people?
I would say no. No. Wow. No. I don't think there really was. I maybe other like peers and people that I met that kind of were just like support systems for me. But as far as like an adult figure, you mean, or something like that? No.
When did things start to turn in the right direction?
So for me, in the right direction, yeah. So for me, so going through all those experiences, being on the streets, going through the sexual exploitation, those different things, eventually having my daughter, being a single parent. And then for me, it was after having my daughter and just the realization that I wanted to be able to provide more for her and that I was so limited. I was a high school dropout. So I could only take precarious employment, could only take low-paying jobs, and I knew that it's not what I wanted for her. I wanted a better life for her, more importantly, and then I knew I had to go back to school. And so I just became determined, I should say, to go back to school. So I went and got my GED. And then after getting my GED, I was able to get into like college. I went to community college because I was living in New York at the time. And then went on to do my bachelor's. And sort of that, so really for me, going back to school was what changed the trajectory of my life.
If you don't mind me asking, what age?
So I had my daughter at 18.
Wow. So how were you able to balance being a mother, taking care of yourself, and going to school all at the same time?
Yeah, no, it was challenging.
And more than challenging, really Rhonelle. It's more than challenging.
So that's really where the health and wellness comes in. And that's really why when I work with young people today, I really am trying to share that knowledge with them, because it really was about developing that mental resilience. And so that's what helped me push through, because of course there was hard days. There was days that I wanted to give up. There was days that I just wanted to go in a room and cry. But, you know what I mean? Having that sort of resilience to say, you know what, this is a bad day, but you're going to bounce back. And so it really is. And then eventually you start sort of building that strength. And I think as well, too, it's also changing, you know, the way that you think about things. So a little bit of like when you think of cognitive behavioral therapy, so CBT, which focuses on sort of the cognitive, the way the mind thinks and the way we behave and how that's connected. And so it was about, for me, starting to say, I can do this, or this is going to work out. Like just positive, just thinking good things, you just put good things out into the universe, good things will happen. So I just started to tell myself every day, like, I can do this. I'm going to pass this test, or I'm going to get this job, or whatever it was. And then slowly these things started to self-actualize. That was because I was believing it. So therefore I was doing things to make it happen.
I could say this after, but I want to ask now, where do you get your mental toughness from?
I think it's a combination. So I'm very interested in that whole topic and that research too. And so when you look at resilience within the literature, some of it is a trait. So there's that sort of trait that some people are born with, I think, but it's also something that can be developed. And I think for me, it was something partially that I was born with some of it, but it was just developed through life circumstances. So it was a matter of going through a challenge and then having to overcome it and then adapt. And then just that kind of continual, challenge, circumstance, overcoming and adapt eventually, I think that helps strengthen your resilience.
Well, do me a favor.
That's an introduction.
Write a book about some of your story, okay? And I'm probably not the only person here, but I'm just looking at some of the comments in the side, especially Jada is saying amazing, resilient. Amazing and strong.
Thank you. I see
Jada saying yes, you should. Kinte saying you should teach a course on resilience. And Melvin is saying yes, she should. So, like I said, you know what? I'm going to ask you when you have time. We need to have you just come back and talk about that part of your journey, because I did not know about that part of your journey till now, and I think that is a conversation itself. But we have to move on because we want to chat about some other things. So, first things first. Cyntoia Brown, give some background, because some people may or may not know about her story, and how did you get so passionate about it?
Okay, so in 2006, Cyntoia Brown, so a Tennessee native, she was 16 years old at the time, and she killed a 43-year-old man that had solicited her for sex. And she was subsequently charged and convicted of murder and sentenced to 51 years in jail. So right away, there was an advocacy on this young woman's case because she was a child. So she was a child victim. Also, she was a sex trafficking victim. So she was under the control of a pimp by the name of Cutthroat, who had forced her into drugs. She was, I think, some of the things that were just horrific, like she was raped continuously on drugs. So she was someone who was traumatized, dealing with PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder. And she did kill this man, and she was always honest and said that she had killed him. But the courts did not decide to take into consideration the fact that you have a child victim of sex trafficking that is in a circumstance where she's with a 43-year-old man that's paying her for sex. And the trauma, the fear, I mean, all the different things we can imagine that she was going through at that moment, and the way that she reacted, to me, and I think to most people, you would think that she would have been given some sort of therapy, some sort of psychological help, not a prison sentence. So this case had happened, and in 2017, a bunch of celebrities had jumped on the case. Kim Kardashian, Rihanna were tweeting about it, and this Free Cyntoia Brown hashtag became really popular. That's when I first heard about her story. I was instantly moved by it. And then just this past year, December in 2018, it was revealed that the Tennessee Supreme Court had denied her appeal. And the only chance for her to have freedom would be if she was get clemency by the governor of Tennessee. And so for me, it was at that point where I just felt that I have a story, not the same as Cyntoia's, but we do have some shared similar experiences, and that I might have some insight into that world and what someone who's going through trauma would react and would feel, and that by sharing my story, I would be able to stand in solidarity.
What, if you're comfortable to share, are some of the similarities between yourself and some of Ms. Brown's story?
Yes, so I was a child victim since I was a teenager of human trafficking. And so for me, in my situation, I was working in strip clubs. So it was different. I wasn't forced into prostitution, but I was forced into stripping. I was dancing. I was giving my money to a pimp, so someone who controlled my behavior, my movements, what I said, how I talked, how I dressed. And so that aspect of it, that control piece of the human trafficking, I'm very familiar with. And so I just felt that a lot of people didn't really understand that. And just because of that, I felt that maybe just having a survivor perspective might be able to help sort of dispel some misconceptions and just help explain that.
Okay, before we go any further, I know there's some people that have some questions. Now, I'm gonna have you control this. We're gonna work together.
Okay.
Would you want me to open up the room and have people ask some questions now, or do you want to get the RKL? Yeah. Okay, so we'll go along the way. So I'm gonna open up the room right now on the Get Vocal platform. I see that Jada Lopez has a question, so I'm gonna open it up. If Jada, you want to come in, or anybody else. Now, do note, folks, we do have to talk about at least two other subjects. So if you can, come on in, and we'll get. So Jada, once I open up, Jada was ready to go. Here comes Jada Lopez, a friend of the Dr. Vibe Show. Hey, Jada, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
I am blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Always happy to have you on the platform. So you have a question. You have a question for Rhonelle.
I do. I wanted to know, how did you get started? Like someone literally kind of grabbing you up and saying, like, this is what you're going to do. Like, and what age, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah. And you know what? I'm really, really happy that you actually asked that question, because so what you had said was, you said, did someone grab you up? So kind of kidnap you.
Or it doesn't even have to be that dramatic, yes. Or, you know.
No. Yeah, no, I completely understand. And that's actually what a lot of people think. And so this is why I'm really speaking out and sharing my story, because I'm trying to dispel a lot of misconceptions. So I was actually introduced to the industry by another female. Oh, okay. So by a peer. Because a lot of times pimps will have their girls recruit girls, because they know, as you know, as a woman, right? So we have less of our fear up when we're dealing with another girl. So it was a girl who I thought was a friend who sort of introduced me to the life, but of course, not completely. And you know what I mean? Obviously with withholding a lot of information, but just saying that, you know, she had all these nice things. She had a condo, right? And I think she was like 20 years old, you know, all these nice things, and you can have all these nice things too. Just, you know, come and meet this guy. He can help you get everything together, sort your life out.
Okay. Thank you. And I just wanted to, you know, like give you big thumbs up on just you sharing your story, how you literally just overcame all those other obstacles in your life. I think that's an amazing story. So I just wanted to commend you on just sharing that with us and being so open about it. Appreciate that.
No, thank you so much. Thank you.
You're on mute. You're on mute, Dr. Vibe.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
I
on mute.
that if you want, you can stay on. We're going to continue on the journey. But I have another question for Rhonelle. How were you able to handle being in that lifestyle with a child?
Oh, so
Okay,
it was before I
just
had
wanted to make sure I had that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No.
Ray, if you want to come in and ask a question right now, would be a good time. There we go. He should be in just a second. Okay. We don't see you, Dre. You may need to click back. Oh, here he comes.
You see me? Am I live?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question. I just did a show about relationships, and one of the comments was by somebody who talked about childhood trauma. Now, after experiencing this trauma, do you feel like that trauma sort of creeps in with relationships you have with people that you're dating?
Oh, yeah. So I think that the thing with childhood trauma, and of course you have to, deal with it. And so I've had therapy, I've done things like that. But of course, I would be lying if I said that didn't affect my adult relationships. So this is something that I have to sort of actively be aware of and be mindful of, because for many, many years I had trust issues, as you can imagine, and just did not trust men at all. Right. So I had to be able to learn to trust men.
Yeah. What led you to be able to trust men again? Because that's a big thing. It's not like, I've never been in that kind of situation, so I can't even pretend that I know. But when it comes to, because when you're in a relationship with somebody and it's intimate, you should feel safe, you should feel secure, you should feel protected. And when you had a situation like yours, it's hard to even identify if you're in a protective relationship in the first place. How did you move from that situation to be able to find that protection, that sense of safety and warmth and comfort in somebody else?
Yeah, so I think I had to do a lot of just me work. So it didn't happen instantly or anything like that. So I was in multiple unhealthy relationships, abusive relationships for many years. So it really wasn't until I sort of took a step back and said, this is not the life that I want to live. And I had to work on me. So for me, that was, I think the changing point was, what kind of life do I want to live? Really had to, which is always hard, right? To really look at yourself and what poor decisions have you made? Like what led you, there's also things that other people have done. So there's external forces, but there's also an element of internal decisions that you have made that have brought you to where you are today. And you have to be able to acknowledge that. You have to also be able to forgive yourself to move on.
That's good. Thank you.
All right. No problem. Thanks, Dre. So what we're going to do, I'm going to lock the room again, and we've also now just put the link on the Get Vocal platform for the on the Cyntoia Brown story that Rhonelle wrote. So if people click on that link, they can take a look at it. Oh, you were just jumping on. Okay, Kinte, I'm going to unlock the room because you have a question. So Kinte, please come on. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I was waiting for Dre to finish. Thank you so much for allowing me to hop on.
No, man, it's our show. It's everybody's show. It's not allowed. We're family. Go for it, man.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing your wonderful story. And I was just wondering, what kind of self-maintenance do you do now so that you can move forward and live the kind of life that you want to?
Yeah, so for me, one of the things that I found was that exercise. So physical fitness is, for me, therapy. So, I do actually have a therapist that I see, but I also find that exercising is so powerful for me. So I work out every day. I literally almost work out every day. And I find that helps. So I'm really into self-care. So that's just taking a nice bath or whatever it is. So just really focusing on, and I also practice mindfulness. So I also try to just, where am I today? How am I feeling? And there's been times when I've just, it's been too much, or just, just having, some difficulty with things, and I don't mind stepping back. So I think it's just being present and just being aware of yourself and just knowing when you're putting yourself in a situation where you don't feel comfortable. Because I've, you know, been in situations, maybe like I was in an interview or something and someone asked a question that I just didn't feel was appropriate or I just didn't feel comfortable with, and being able to say like, you know, I don't want to answer that or something like that.
Well, like I said, thank you so much. And I will sit in the peanut gallery and continue to enjoy you.
No problem. Thank you, Kinte. Much appreciation. All right. So and again, thanks everyone. And actually, Melvin Lars has a question asking, when you share this story with your partners or someone you're dating, what is their initial reaction?
Yeah. So, you know what, that's a really good question, Melvin. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't share this story with anybody.
Okay.
For many years. Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah. So actually me sharing this story, this Cyntoia Brown, was sort of me sharing it with the world too. So it's interesting. I was actually talking to an ex of mine who I'm still really good friends with. And, you know, he read the Cyntoia Brown piece and he was like, wait, what? He didn't know, you know, so it wasn't something that I felt necessarily comfortable sharing with people until I think I sort of was ready to. Do you know what I mean? Like I had accepted it, but as far as sharing that story, I still felt very close to it. And so, I mean, obviously now I've shared it with everybody, so I don't have that problem anymore. But
good stuff. And what was that feeling, having a chance to share? Was it a feeling of freedom, weight off the back of your shoulders?
Yeah. You know, it really was, because I felt that I was living two lives. You know, so I felt that I was living the life that I live day to day. You know, I worked in the corporate world. I worked in healthcare as an analyst, you know, put on my suit, do the 9-to-5 job. But then I had this other life, past life that I had lived that I almost, you know, was so detached from. But of course, you can't forget the past, right? It's always there. It's part of you. It shaped the woman that I am today. And I think by sort of speaking on it for me and sharing my story, it was healing for me. It's been a healing process. It's also been very empowering because I've connected with other survivors, you know, other young women, other young men, just other young people who are going through similar situations that I went through, and being able to share my story and see how I can impact their lives, how they can say, you know what, I'm a survivor of human trafficking and I want to kill myself. But you know what? Like now talking to you or hearing the story, I can understand that, you know, there's more to life. Like I can eventually at some point be able to get on with my life, have a family, you know, whatever you want. Because a lot of times when people come from this trauma, they're so stuck in it. It's so hard to move forward.
Jada Lopez is saying, oh, wow, growth. No
Thank
problem.
you.
Let's talk about that R&B singer named R. Kelly. And Jada's saying sharing information is growth and it helps others. Very true, Jada. Very, very true.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on Mr. Kelly? And I think, and you bring a nice angle to it in that the whole world of trafficking, because I don't think that's really been talked about in regards to the R. Kelly allegations over the last number of years. So please share with us.
Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts on R. Kelly. And if you follow me on Twitter, you shall see that. So first of all, I feel we are all collectively to blame for the fact that this man, for the last 30 decades, has abused and exploited our young women, so countless Black women and girls. I feel that because he's a singer, and in our society, we put celebrities and singers, we put them on this sort of like demigod status, people didn't want to tear him down. So it was kind of like, oh, well, he's a great singer, so that somehow justified a lot of his behavior. And then I think another piece to the R. Kelly is that because he's a Black man, and historically, as you know, particularly in the States, Black men have been falsely accused of crimes. Black men have been imprisoned of crimes that they did not commit. Black men have been killed for crimes they did not commit. And so it's very hard, I think, for the Black community to sort of throw away one of our own, even if we know they're doing something wrong for a lot of times, because it's just, history has told us that, you know, they're always coming after us. And I think for that reason, a lot of times the Black community just, for some reason, did not want to just kind of dismiss R. Kelly. And then another piece to it, I think, is the way, again, society, we view Black women. You know, a lot of people have said this. They said, you know, if these young women and girls were white, would it be different? Would he have been able to get away with this for 30 years? I don't think so. I mean, I think that's just the reality of life. I think that Black women, as we know, are hypersexualized. And there is a lack of empathy, I think, from people when it comes to Black women and sexual violence. It's many times it's her fault. It's what did she do? It's, you know, she's a fast girl, or just language like that, that I think sort of played in a part with the fact that people were able to turn their backs on this behavior that everybody seemed to know was going on.
Well, you are getting supporters in the chat section here. Sonia is saying, I agree. It definitely would have been a different outcome.
Yeah.
Let's see. Melvin saying, excellent perspective. Jada saying in capital letters, it would be different. So, go ahead.
I mean, yeah. And so, but so the way so I wrote this piece in R. Kelly, and you can share it with everyone else. And that was because I watched the docuseries. So I'd heard about the Aaliyah marriage annulment. I'd heard about the videotape. I think that was over a decade ago. I'd heard about that one. And still, I'll be honest, I still listen to R. Kelly.
Why?
I mean, do you know what I mean?
And I'm not saying this word. Some people would say, question you, why are you still listening to R. Kelly? And it's almost like,
no, not today.
Okay.
Not now. Yeah. Okay. But what I'm saying is, up until I watched the docuseries, I was still like, I wouldn't buy his album, you know what I mean? But I had him, I think, like on my iTunes or whatever. And so I hadn't completely dismissed him either. So I think that's why I say we were all guilty, because I still had a couple of those tunes that I was still bobbing to, even though, you know what I mean, I've heard about his behavior too for many years. But after watching the docuseries, I think for me that was powerful. I think anyone that watched that, if you were able to get through the 6 episodes, it was some of the most heartbreaking, heart-wrenching stuff that I've seen in years. And so that really, I think, inspired me to say, this man and his behavior, it's not a sex cult or whatever language people want to throw around. I mean, it's human trafficking. That's exactly what it is. And it's what we have to call it.
Okay, comments are flying in here. So let me catch up here on the Get Vocal platform. Jada saying she watched the documentary along with her husband. Dre is saying musicians are not held to the same standard or held accountable. Many actually promote the behavior they engage in their music. Jada saying, I blame our culture. Dre, I'll get Rhonelle's Twitter for you in just a moment. Sonia said, I watched the series, but it was hard to grasp. And Melvin is saying and he's saying that what Dre said about the entertainers is the same with many professional athletes too.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think that's true. I think we as a society do that. So it's not just Black athletes or Black singers. I mean, there's people have mentioned, Elvis Presley started courting Priscilla when she was 14. So, you know what I mean? This is not just Black musicians and athletes that are doing this kind of behavior. And we do seem to accept it when it's someone who has that sort of elevated status in society. But kind of going back to that human trafficking piece. So when you listen to the women and they describe the behavior of R. Kelly, it's very much in line with human trafficking. So it starts off with recruiting. So if you watch the series, you'll see he started going to high schools, right? Looking for girls, recruiting. So he would go to high schools looking for vulnerable girls, obviously, that he could start to manipulate. And so that kind of comes to the next stage towards the grooming. So when you find that vulnerable victim, then you start to groom them. So it's telling them things that they want to hear. I think one of the ladies, and I forget what her name was, she wanted to be a singer. I think she's still actually trapped with him, but she wanted to be a singer, and that's how she was connected with him. And the parents were saying, and he was telling, he was going to make her a star, and she was saying, oh, he's going to make me a star. So that's part of the grooming is, selling the dreams, selling whatever it is that the person needs to hear. And then once you have them and they fall in love with you or they feel safe with you, then comes the exploitation. Oh, I can't hear.
Doing it again. So for people watching in real time on the Get Vocal platform, I've opened up the room again. So if you want to jump in, add commentary, comments, questions, please feel free to jump in. And I have a feeling we'll get I have at least one person I know that will probably jump back in for sure. The whole area of human trafficking, when did you start becoming passionate to the point where you became an advocate for it? What changed? What happened in your journey to say, you know what, I'm going to advocate for this, or because of my story?
Sure. Yeah. So it really was when I started the Rise Initiative. So I started the Rise Initiative this past summer. And it was going through a career transition. So I had spent, years working in the healthcare industry, was finishing up my master's degree, and didn't kind of know what I wanted to do, and had the opportunity to do some volunteer work. And in volunteering, I was volunteering with young women, and some of them happened to be survivors of human trafficking. And I was talking to them. And, one of the girls just kind of said, oh, you have everything going, you have everything together, like you don't understand, you don't get it. And I thought, wait a second. No, I do get it, And so then I started sharing her my story, and she was, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like you do get it. You understand what this is. And she was so impacted by that. The fact that even though I had that experience, I was able to get to the point that I am today. Do you know what I mean? And she was just, how did you get there? Please, kind of share. And that really, to me, was a point where I said, you know what? It's not about just, having this story and coming out the other end, but it's about how can I help and benefit other people? And so then I just started engaging with the city of Toronto and trying to see what they're doing with their work and policy surrounding human trafficking, and saw that there was a lot of opportunity to really help with misconceptions of what it is. So that awareness piece where, things like people assuming that you have to be kidnapped, bound, and gagged, which is not the case many times. Many times it's someone you meet on Twitter, it's someone you meet on Instagram, someone you meet on Tinder, Facebook. This is how young girls are meeting pimps nowadays. So for me, it was really the advocacy to create the awareness, and then also to be able to support any sort of policies that will help survivors.
What impact and effect has social media had on the world of human trafficking?
Oof. Well, I can tell you it's made things a whole lot easier for predators. I mean, there's no other way to say it but that. It's basically like, okay, this is how it works. Okay. Predators, it's a numbers game, right? This is how they think. So if I'm on Tinder or Plenty of Fish or Match.com, I send a message, hey, beautiful, you're sexy, whatever, to 100 girls. I'm just sending a message I copy and pasted. All I need is 5 girls to respond to that. Now I have 5 girls who I know, they're needy, they need something. So then I play them and I work them, couple, come back messaging, and I see, as long as you have 1 girl, that's all that they need to exploit. And so social media has made it easier. They don't have to go to the malls. They don't have to go to the bus stops. They don't have to wait outside of homeless shelters. They just go online in their house, in their home, you know what I mean? So if anything, our kids are right there for them in their lap.
You also mentioned a few moments ago about the assumptions when it comes to the world of human trafficking. Can you share some of those assumptions and why they're not true?
Yeah. So a couple. So one we kind of talked about was the idea that you have to be kidnapped, and that so you're kidnapped and you're taken somewhere else. When in reality, at least in Canada, so I don't know the stats for the States, but in Canada, 90% of human trafficking victims are Canadian born, so they're Canadian, and they're not coming from another country. So not coming from Europe or Africa or South America. They're Canadian citizens. And another misconception is that you're bound, you're gagged, you're put in a room somewhere where you can't leave, which is the case. So all these circumstances do happen, but many of the times I've met young girls who are living at home with their parents while they were being trafficked.
How does that happen? How does that work?
Yes. Well, what happens is they're living at home, they're skipping school to go to motels to sleep with customers. After school, they're telling their parents they're at their girlfriend's house, and meanwhile, they're going to motels to sleep. Like, yes.
Has this world of human trafficking become more sophisticated now?
I think so. I think because, like you said, with the technology, access is so much easier. And there's actually software that you can get. I was at a conference when they were talking about, I forget the name of it, where so if I'm a young person, I'm posting on Facebook or Instagram, I'm depressed or I'm fat, or, how young people, they're very open. They're talking about how their feelings are. There's software that can scan that. So someone can actually go through like 1,000 Facebook profiles, 1,000 Instagram, and just pick up words. So anytime they see the word suicide, depressed, hate my parents, any sort of things that they put as the tags, they know they have a child who's vulnerable that they can go and try to exploit. So it's making it much easier for them to find young people too. And then I think technology also supports even just the exploitation, because a lot now with Airbnb, and I'm not trying to say anything negative about Airbnb because I use Airbnb too, but here in Toronto at least, a lot of the Airbnb units are used for prostitution.
Wow, that I did not know. That I did not know. And Cyntoia is saying the information you are dropping is eye-opening, and as we say in the Dr. Vibe, for your bombs. And Dre is saying many don't see prostitution as the same thing as trafficking. Is that correct?
Well, so there's a difference between sex workers. So women who willingly choose to be sex workers. So I have nothing against a woman, grown woman of legal age who says, I want to work in the sex industry. I want to be a dancer. I want to be a prostitute, escort, whatever. That's a different thing. She's working and she's taking all the money for herself. And if that's what, if that's what she wants to do, of course, that's different. We're talking about human trafficking is where you're under the control of somebody else. That's the difference. Wow. But again, sorry, and anyone under 18 can never be a prostitute. There's no such thing as a child prostitute. That's always human trafficking, because a child cannot make the decision to enter into the sex industry. So it's always human trafficking. There is a big difference. Folks, I love the comments you're making on the side there. Again, if you want to come on and add to the epic conversation, please. There are 2 seats open. Would love you to come in and give your thoughts. You're great. Okay. There's a great conversation going on here. And again, thanks everyone who's watching it. Kente has provided a link for a program on Netflix. I am Jane Doe, I think it says. What is it about?
So Kente, come on in, join in, Kente. Please tell us. And Jada's coming. Beautiful.
Sorry about that. I don't trust the government, so I keep my camera down. But I always got to put it back.
Yeah. Oh, you see, he just did it again. So Jada.
He did.
Oh, Kente's coming back. Here we go.
The man, he didn't like that. There's a documentary about Backpage. Backpage? It's called I Am Jane Doe, where it talks about how they basically, the people that own Backpage work in conjunction, essentially, with the traffickers, essentially, and how they thwarted everything with the legal system and everything. It's deep. You definitely should check it out if you haven't seen it.
I've heard it. Yeah, I've heard about that. So I didn't know that was the title. But
I realized too. I said I should put the title because it's not something that you would think of as the title.
And that's funny because I've had it on my list for a while. I just haven't watched it, and I didn't realize it was about the same thing you were telling me about a week ago. So I'm definitely going to take a look at it.
Go ahead, Jid. Yes.
No. Go ahead. Because I just need to get my train of thought again.
It's interesting. I'm going to ask Rhonelle, the expert, and also if Kente and Jada want to chime in. How serious does the Black community take human trafficking?
I don't think we take it serious at all, to be quite honest. I think just like she said, where Black women or Black young girls are viewed, Black girls and females in general, no matter what age, we are deemed very sexual. We're looked at as sexual beings. So that being said, I think people are constantly, even after the doc series had aired, you had women and Black women who look like us literally saying how they asked for it and how they wanted it. Where were their parents? And it's just like, really? Like, they're kids. He should know better. Like, why are we always victim shaming and not literally looking towards the accuser and the predator. That doesn't make sense to me at all. So I think in the Black community, I think we ignore it. I think we turn a blind eye. I think we don't want to know about it. I think we view each other, and even if you blame, like if a little girl or even a little boy went to their mom or their aunt, whoever their parental is, and said such and such touched me, and if in the Black community, they would be like, what? Well, what did you do? And normally you won't have people that will have your back. So I think in the Black community, I think we definitely turn a blind eye to it, in my opinion.
Well, let me speak up for the Black community to a certain degree. I don't think it's just a Black community issue. It's a human issue. Yes. I can tell you countless of other nationalities that do the same thing.
Oh yeah.
So we just have this thing in the Black community is if somebody Black does something, it means that all Black people do it. That's not true. I think it's something that across the board we need to fix. And yes, there's countless situations where we didn't act in the right way. But I wouldn't say this is because we have some kind of deficiency as Black people where we co-sign. Nobody co-signs human trafficking. I think there's not an understanding of really what human trafficking is. I mean, to be honest with you, we have so many things to worry about. We have so many boogeymen that sometimes we don't understand the complexities of certain issues, right? So I think some people don't understand what human trafficking is. They have some kind of idea. They really don't know like they should. So education is the big thing. I think by educating our community about what it is, what it looks like, how we can stop it, what exactly it is, I think that would really help. That would help the situation. But I'm not going to say that Black people have some ownership over ignorance. I would never say that.
Rhonelle has got something to say.
I think I would say that, I kind of agree with both of you. So I agree that it's a human problem. It's not necessarily just a Black problem. But I will say that Black women have been historically and to this day hypersexualized, viewed in a much different way than women of other nationalities and races are. And so because of that, we as Black people do internalize that, whether we want to admit it or not, sort of that society's view of Black women, we take on too. So when you look at, and there's actually been studies of when a Black girl does something or has a sexual experience, how just people react differently to it. White people, Black people, than say a white girl. Or if you see a Black girl wearing a certain outfit and they actually have people track their reactions, it's different than a white girl. So it's just, I think there has been this over-sexualization, and this goes back to slavery of Black women, that I think we have internalized it, whether we want to admit that or not. And so we, as Black people, look at Black women differently.
But also, there's a thing that we miss too, is that Black men have been hypersexualized as well. And a lot of our identity is with our penises, right? And so, and Black men don't understand that it's really a negative. We think it's a positive that, those old tropes about who we are, and that all of our value is through our not our sexuality, but our sexual prowess. And I think that, and I've talked about this before so many times about how one of our issues is that the relationship between Black men and women is so fractured, and that where it affects our community. And I feel like that one thing that we need to really work on is the relationship between us, because the idea of we have to look at, we have to look at our protecting our communities, Black men specifically, right? And one of the things that you can do is protect the women in your community as well. We need to see that as something that's very important.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a really good point, because if you watch the docuseries, there was also claims that R. Kelly was a victim of child molestation. So which we know, hurt people hurt, right? So there's an idea that, perhaps, he himself was molested as a child, And so his perceptions of sexuality and who he was and that trauma was probably never dealt with. And then he grew up sort of just replicating that same behavior. So I do think, I mean, I'm not demonizing, of course, all Black people or all Black men or anything. I think, you know, we have to come together and support each other. You know, so Black women, we have to support each other. Black men, we have to support each other as a community. And when someone says that, you know, something's happened to them or they've been hurt, I think we should believe them. You know, it's interesting because the whole Me Too, #MeToo movement happened, which was started by a Black woman, even though she doesn't necessarily get credit for it. But for some reason, a lot of Black people haven't been included in that Me Too hashtag. Do you know what I mean? So the support has been sort of for, I find, white female survivors, but not Black
Let's just be honest.
Let's
just be honest. The feminist community has never really supported Black women. Let's just be honest.
And they don't. So yeah, I agree with that. Right. Going back to real quick what Kente said. So I don't disagree with you. Initially, Dr. Vibe had asked, like, in the Black community, do we think that we overlook, or, you know what I mean? Like we're not focusing on human trafficking. And I think what my answer was literally, yeah. I think because, and you agreed to it in a certain extent, as far as you saying that as a community, we don't understand. Some of us don't know. And as far as just literally educating ourselves, I'm not saying it doesn't happen to other communities and other race and other, you know, cultures and stuff like that. Absolutely it does. But we were particularly talking about Black in our community. And as far as what I said in the comments, as far as the culture, I said, for me, I feel like I blame the culture as far as continue playing his music, not holding him accountable back then, right? When he was even dealing with Aaliyah, and that was made public back then, right? Things of that nature. As far as you know, the record labels still having him sign. Up until now, they had to literally fly a airplane saying you need to, the banner to boycott, like to fire him. And then 2-3 days later, they did. And that's what I meant by blaming the culture. I blame us, you know, as far as still playing his music at the clubs, still promoting his stuff. No one. He just celebrated his birthday, I think, a few days after the doc series aired, and people were still going. People were cheering. People were celebrating with him. That's disgusting, in my opinion. Like, I blame the culture, and that's what I meant by that. And I wanted to ask you a question, Rhonelle, real quick. What was it like as far as you leaving home, and as far as your parents, not like your adopted parents, not looking for you? Like, did they ever seek to find you like when you ran away?
No. So it was pretty much arranged with my family, but I would talk to them, you know, a couple times. You know, I would talk to them infrequently. So I was still in contact with them, and they knew that I was living in Toronto. They didn't know what I was doing, obviously. They didn't know that. I never, you know, felt comfortable, obviously, telling them that piece. But they knew I was in Toronto.
Jada, if you want to talk, take yourself off mute, because when there was echoing, there was some echoing. So Jada, okay, go ahead.
No, okay, thank you. No, I just wanted to know that from earlier.
So Rhonelle, what sort of information, what sort of stories are you hearing from victims since you started your initiative? What are you hearing out there? What are some of the common things that you're hearing out there from victims or people that are involved on the wrong end when it comes to human trafficking?
Yeah, so it's a lot of the same. It's a lot of similar stories of someone who was vulnerable, so someone who was, you know, insecure, depressed, going through issues, didn't feel connected to their family. Many of these girls still live with their family. So I haven't met as many that were homeless, so had a situation like mine. Actually, many of them were like, I was living at home, I was living with my family, but I just wasn't connected to my family. I didn't feel like I belonged. And I met this guy, and he basically was Prince Charming. You know, he was everything that I wanted. He said all the right things. And then, you know, took me shopping, did all these things for me. And then at some point, once he felt that he had, you know, the young girl where he wanted her, then it was, okay, I need you to do this. And even the sort of introduction into the sex industry can vary. So I've talked to young girls where it's, the guy, he physically is violent. You have to do this, holding you down. I've had young girls tell me, where guys will say, listen, we're doing this together. We're building our life together. We're creating wealth together. Do you know what I mean? So it's a different type of game they're playing. There's many different type of, sort of lies. Manipulation that they use.
Just want to update before anyone else wants to come in with comments. Dre is saying, I went to a family reunion when I was 12. This stuck in my mind all these years. An older guy was looking at a little girl and said, quote, she had bedroom eyes, unquote. I didn't understand then what he was talking about, but as I got older, I understood. Predators condition girls from so young to use to be certain behaviors. And then So Steph is saying, I can't say what other cultures do, but I think that as Black people, we are so scrutinized by others, we like to bury our secrets and our shame. Keep it in the house, as, quote, Big Mama, unquote, would say.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree with that.
And that's very true. We don't like to talk about it. Like I think in our household, in the Black community, we don't like to talk about serious topics. I mean, as far as I'm generalizing. I mean, in my household, we went down to the nitty gritty. But in the majority of Black households that I've noticed, right, speaking to my friends and speaking to their friends and stuff like that, as far as conversations, they wouldn't happen. Like tough conversations about sex, about human trafficking, about prostitution, about sex work, those conversations weren't happening. Like, let's be honest, or even just like being molested by a family member or a close friend. Those conversations weren't happening. I mean, for, other households that I know in our community, like that wasn't normal conversation for a Black family to have growing up. And I think that's the problem. I feel like just like I think Kente said, where as far as educating ourselves, I think the more we talk about it, I think the more we normalize the topic, not the actual act, but the topic. As far as having educational and comfortable, as far as we're getting comfortable conversations like this, I think we need to get uncomfortable. We need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable with conversations like this in our household, because it would prevent a lot of, a child feeling like they're alone or they don't have anyone to come to or go to. I think having conversations like these are important, no matter what household you're in.
No, I know, I completely agree with you that I think that it really is that just that education piece and being comfortable having these kind of conversations. So I was just on a radio show and we were talking about, what parents can look out for. But also, and the one thing I said was, parents have to have that conversation with their young people. And you can't have it with your daughter when she's 16. You have it with your daughter when she's 12,
younger,
when she's 11, because that, you know what I mean? Like, this is the reality. This is when you have to have that conversation, because by the time she's 16, it's too late.
I mean, but to be fair though, like, my parents never had a conversation with me about sex trafficking or anything like that. There was no, I think now is the time for that to more so happen, but a lot of families didn't do it because it just wasn't part of the discussion. Now with more education, it will be. So it's not like because our community is somehow effed up that we don't do that. I mean, it's just that, most people are not going to have that conversation at Sunday dinner.
Oh no, I'm not even talking about the Black community. I'm talking about parents in general.
And I said that.
In general, I'm saying
every household.
Okay, because I just don't like when these conversations turn into Black communities messed up because we don't.
Well, we're talking about R. Kelly, and he's a Black man. So, and he was literally molesting Black young girls. So that's why we're talking about the Black community in general.
No, I'm talking about the idea that the Black community don't have conversations about this and that. I'm not talking about the R. Kelly thing. The R. Kelly thing is a failure of
many
people. It's a failure of the people that were around him. It's the failure of the people that didn't prosecute him.
I agree.
It wasn't my failure. I've been talking about him for 20 years. I can't stand.
Well, I'm not personalizing. I'm generalizing when I say in the Black community. And at the end, I did say every household should be having conversations like that. I did add that.
I know I've been in places where R. Kelly came on, and we're not talking about in the last couple of weeks where they said turn that blank off. So I mean, there was a lot of people who were not on the R. Kelly wagon post the tape and beyond. So
I'm not holding every Black person accountable for what we're doing. I'm saying overall, at the majority, look at it, Kente. Like, let's call it spade a spade. Like, let's not, like, I understand you're coming from a Black male, like, perspective, right? Look at it for what it is, right? Overall, we've been playing, like, he's been bumping in the clubs, right? He's been able to sell albums and shows. So as overall, and I'm not saying white people don't listen to his music, but he's definitely backed up. Look who he was going after. He was going after young Black girls. So not only that, but as a community. So I have to generalize it. I'm not saying everyone. I haven't listened to R. Kelly in years as well, but I'm putting myself in it because of the fact that I'm a part of the Black community. And that's what I mean by that. I'm not going to sit here and say, like, these 200 people in New York didn't listen to him, whatever, and they protested from 10 years ago. Come on. Like, I'm saying overall, as a community, we supported him.
Okay.
And that's what I mean by that.
I'm gonna move the conversation another direction. I want to get Rhonelle to talk about what are her thoughts about the enforcement of law, the law community, the police community when it comes to human trafficking. Obviously, they're not doing enough.
Well, I mean, so I've recently actually started talking to sort of with the city of Toronto and sort of understanding what law enforcement is doing here. So what policies are sort of in order here. And I don't know, I wouldn't say that they're not doing enough. I don't want to say that. I think even with the law enforcement, there is an education piece. So as far as what they need to look out for, do you know what I mean? Because a lot of times they don't know when they encounter a woman if she's being trafficked. So many times they encounter a woman and let's say it's, she's being charged for, prostitution, but they don't know that this is actually a victim of human trafficking, not a criminal. So, I mean, I think there's that whole sort of education piece of law enforcement here too. And then just the laws have to sort of adapt with technology. Do you know what I mean? We create these laws, but technology is just changing so fast. And so we have to be able to sort of stay on top of what's happening with social media, what's happening with these dating apps and things like that. So I think there's an education piece. There definitely is a push for that. So at least I can speak of within Toronto here, there is a major push. There's a special human trafficking force that Toronto has here. And this is strictly all they do. There's been education and training for first responders and service providers. There's been training for hotel workers, maids. So anyone that would sort of encounter women that potentially could be trafficked to be able to identify them. So there's a lot of work being done. I think it's just a matter of just like continuing to do it. Just continue to get the message out there, continue to share the knowledge until it sort of reaches everyone's eyes.
I'm going to ask people that are on this conversation live, is the subject of human trafficking one that's discussed in the cities that you're in?
Oh yeah, for sure. LA, yeah. I live in Los Angeles, so yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I live in Cyntoia.
And what's being done about it? Is enough being done about it? Is it a constant topic? Oh wow, Houston is number 1 in the nation for human trafficking. Wow.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Wow.
Yeah, it is for New York and Atlanta. Yeah, it definitely is. It's being talked about.
It's not. I mean, look, until it's eradicated, not enough is being said.
Point taken.
That's true.
Taken. And Sonia's saying, I live in a small city, so not at all. And those are the cities where it's really not talked about, where it's very prevalent.
I mean, I one thing that I was definitely glad that I'm so sorry. I don't want to mispronounce your name now.
Rhonelle.
Okay, Rhonelle. One thing that I'm glad that you talked about was a lot of people think that human trafficking is just being kidnapped or snatched off the streets. That's the one thing that is not talked about, that human trafficking is more than just someone just grabbing someone off the streets, like, or sending them to Dubai or something like that. that can't be overstated enough. That that it's very different than what people realize.
Yes, no, I agree. And that's where I think the awareness piece comes in. And so the work that I do and many other advocates and activists in North America, across the world, are really focused on is creating that education. So just to get the people to have an understanding what it looks like, what it is, because there's so many misconceptions. So another misconception is that human trafficking always involves sex. It doesn't always involve sex. It doesn't always involve forced prostitution. And so the reason why that's important, because there's a lot of victims that don't even know that they're victims.
Can you explain that?
Like,
right?
Oh, sorry. Sorry. No, I was just going to say, a lot of people are being trafficked as maids as well. Like, there was this great movie about this a woman who was brought from Africa to England and forced into it. So trafficking also, you see that a lot as well, and nannies and stuff like that.
Yeah, so there's labor trafficking. So we have labor trafficking, forced marriage, and then we have sex trafficking. So there's different kinds of trafficking too. But even in sex trafficking, it's not always forced prostitution. So, for instance, there's some women who work in strip clubs. Some women maybe are forced to perform sex acts in the strip club, but not all young women. Some women are working in massage parlors. Some women are escorting. So there's all sorts of different, sort of paths that young women are being forced into, but it doesn't always look the same. And so what happens a lot of times is for young girls who don't know, they're in a relationship with a guy, they think he's their boyfriend or their man, and he's saying, okay, I just want you to dance. You're not having sex with anyone, you're just dancing. But she's giving him all the money, he's telling her what to do and how to do it. She may not identify herself as a victim of human trafficking, because in her mind, it doesn't look like what she thinks human trafficking is either. So there's actually a lot of victims, again, who just don't even know that they're victims.
And in the porn industry too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's sad. Wow.
That's wow.
So, education is key.
Could you give us another misconception, Rhonelle?
So another one I think which is important is understanding sort of the control piece of it. So I think a lot of people will say something, well, let's talk about our Kelly girls. Why didn't they leave? Or, you're not handcuffed somewhere, so you could just walk up and leave. But what people understand is it's almost like Stockholm syndrome. So its idea is that many times when young women are in these situations, they form an attachment, even if they're being abused, even no matter how horrible the situation is, they form this attachment with their abuser. And this is just a survival mechanism. And so because of that, they many times cannot even will themselves to leave, no matter how horrible the situation is. So even though they're not physically imprisoned anywhere, they can't leave. And so I can actually give sort of a personal perspective on that. So for me, for instance, I write about this in my blogs. I was never physically abused. I was never beaten, right? I was never forced to you have to, sleep with this man. And I lived at the time I was renting a room. So I had free will to come and go as I pleased, but still I stayed, right? So some people will say, well, you could have just left. You didn't have to stay, but they don't understand that psychologically I was being controlled.
The mental aspect.
There's that huge, yeah. A lot of people don't get that piece, and that is huge. That to me, I personally believe that's the biggest piece.
Predators, they do this thing where they study human nature, and they can look at people and tell what method they need to do to get them to do what they want.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I recently read an article. I'll share it with you after Dr. Vibes, but it was, you can share it with the group, but it was a man, and he works, I think, in LA, and he has an organization focused on human trafficking, and he talked about the 5 disguises that traffickers wear. And so one was the disguise of the boyfriend. So that's the one we hear, the Romeo pimp, the boyfriend. The other was the disguise of like the father figure. So coming in there, I'm like, I'm family, I'm a father figure for people who don't feel like they belong. And then there was the disguise of the protector. So the protector was for someone who, for like someone like me, was homeless. So you want to feel that sense of protection. And then there's the one of the promiser. So that's the kind of one that, oh, we're going to go on all these trips. We're going to do this. You're going to have all these things, And then I think the other one was the one that's it's like the Punisher. So that's the one where you think of when you hear the term like a gorilla pimp. So that's the one that would use force and intimidation and violence to keep somebody. So there's different kind of disguises that people will use. And you're right. And I do believe that part of the whole recruiting and the grooming is determining what would be the best sort of way, sort of, when they're grooming their victims.
No, yeah. Well, I agree.
Yeah. So I'll find that article and I'll share it with you because it's very, very insightful.
It sounds like it, but yeah, I think it's, in my opinion, I think it really is all psychological. You're on mute, Dr. Vibe.
So Steph is saying people can accept that a woman is afraid to leave an abusive husband, but not a sex worker who's basically being raped on a daily basis.
Yes. It's like a domestic, it's the same thing as a domestic abuse. It's that same type of psychological control.
And,
I think because it's wrapped differently, I think that's why it's harder for people to accept that though. I think at times, like I was saying, where a lot of times we like to, as a society, right, where people like to blame the victim. They victim blame, right? So because again, it's disguised differently and I agree. I think it's wrapped differently. That's what I said, like I agree. It's the same stuff, but it's just wrapped differently and people are willing to accept that more so than if it looks like this. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a really hard subject. It's a sensitive subject, but it's a conversation topic that needs to be spoken about more. And not just because R. Kelly got,
I agree.
Got taken out or not taken out, but exposed allegedly. Again, I'm going to say it's happened, right? Allegedly. But again, and so Steph says same BS, different wrapping. Tor says he has been exposed for years. He has been, but nothing's been done.
Exactly, so that's different.
So Rhonelle, in your journey right now, this has probably been no better time to share about this. How are you handling all the attention that you're getting because of this subject?
Yeah, no, definitely. It just sort of me sharing my story and then all these different cases, these international cases that have happened. There's definitely a lot of exposure and a lot of interest. And so for me, I feel that because I waited until I was really ready to share and really comfortable, because when you're sharing something like this, it's very raw, it's very real. And, and I remember when I first posted my Cyntoia Brown blog, I was like, that's it. Because once you put it into the, the Ethernet, like it's there for life. But I think, because I was in that comfortable place and I was ready to share, that for me now, I just feel like it's just about the opportunities now to sort of really create the awareness.
And what made you so comfortable after so long? Like, what was it that, like, I'm comfortable,
it took time. Yeah, no, for sure. So I think for me, it took time. This wasn't an overnight process. But I think, like I said, for me, I think going back to school for me was definitely a life changer. That really helped me build back my self-confidence, my self-worth, and my value. I was always a really good student in school, and I always sort of regretted that I had dropped out. And kind of going back to school, I think, found myself, like that person that I was before, like all the drama happened. And then kind of, having, professional career successes and things like that really helped me just sort of build that confidence. Okay, you can do it, Rhonelle, and things like that. So I think that, and then also just being just mindful, really, like I said, it's always about that self-care. It's like checking in with yourself. Like I check in with myself all the time, like, okay, like where am I at? How am I feeling? And things like that. And it's not like everything is wonderful. So I don't want to create some sort of, picture or some sort of illusion that everything is amazing. I don't have bad days. Like, I still have bad days today, and I presume I will have bad days for the rest of my life. I think that's just the reality of life. There's going to be certain times when I get overwhelmed, or do you know what I mean? So it's just a matter of, okay, when that happens, just knowing what are the tools and strategies that I need to take care of myself.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Taurus is asking, have you suffered any mental trauma? Have you been diagnosed with any mental trauma at all through this journey at all?
Well, yeah. Well, I spoke with a psychiatrist years after all this happened, and he had identified that I had chronic PTSD, just in all these sort of experiences. And it was interesting that he had said that it's a different way people adapt to things, but that sort of my mind had just gone into survival mode. And so kind of because I'd gone through so much trauma, even as a young person, like as a child, and then in my teen years, I kind of had that survival mode already sort of instinctually, I guess, sort of in me. And so by the time I was in these situations when I was a teenager, I was maybe perhaps better able to adapt to things than maybe other people had, So,
wow.
I don't know.
Your transparency is enlightening and strengthening, because I don't know many people who have been what you've been through, have just been so, and I know it's a process and it's taken time, but it's been a light for me on this conversation, and it's been very encouraging.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thank you for having me here to share, because I think it's important to talk about this stuff. It's important to destigmatize human trafficking, victims of sexual violence, victims of any sort of abuse, because there's so much shame that is attached with all this stuff that a lot of people will hold that with them. And I've met many people that hold so much shame and guilt and anger and hate for themselves, it drives them to drug use, abusive relationships. It's, so many negative things, and just self-hate and just self-harm and things like that. So it's important for us to talk about these things and tell survivors, you're loved, it's okay, we have your back, that kind of thing. So any opportunity that I can to sort of share and to help support other people, to me, I'm grateful.
I want to shout out to Miss RMBA on the Periscope platform. Taurus has another question. I don't know if you want to answer it or not, but they're asking, what is your tolerance to abuse now?
I don't
No, I don't either. So you have to flush it out a little bit. But what I'm going to do is start winding it down here, and give us some calls to action when it comes to human trafficking. You've given some, but if you have any additional that we can take away from this conversation and be advocates in our own communities, in our own way, in our own everyday life, how can we? What can you empower us with going forward?
Yeah, well, I think, wherever you are, whatever community you're in, you can look out, because most communities have some sort of anti-human trafficking group or grassroots organization. So if you want to support, if you want to volunteer, I think within your own life, especially if you're a parent, have these conversations with your kids, have them with your younger brothers and younger sisters, and not just girls too. So have them with your sons too, have them with your nieces, have them with your nephews, have these conversations with your mom and your dad, with your grandma and grandpa. I think it's important that we start having these conversations, and we destigmatize it. So sort of what we've done with mental health. So mental health was something that no one wanted to talk about. People were uncomfortable with for many years. And only recently now have people been comfortable saying, listen, I have anxiety, I have depression, I have, bipolar disorder. And I think it has to be the same way when we talk about sexual abuse, sexual violence, is that people feel comfortable saying, I'm a survivor. And there's going to be any shame, there's not going to be any guilt, and there's going to be no judgment. Because only then can we work to prevent these things from happening. Because what will happen is, when something happens to a young person, right away, they'll know this is wrong. This person shouldn't have touched me this way, or shouldn't have looked at me this way. This is wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. Let me tell my mom, my dad, somebody, an adult. But as long as we still have this you know, the secret of it and the shame, people will just live with this stuff and they won't tell anybody.
Just to follow up, I think Tourist explained his question a bit more here, saying that your tolerance to abuse now, do you walk away from it or do you call out on it? And I think I know what you do.
Definitely call out on
Absolutely.
it. Yes.
That is fantastic. Well,
Yes.
We'll end out on that piece. Rhonelle, first things first, I'd like to thank you for taking time from your positive, productive schedule to share with us, being transparent with us. And like I said, I've got a lot of takeaways, and I'm a better person at the end of this conversation, epic conversation, than I was before. I really appreciate it. Now, I know I've given your contact information in the comment section, but if you say it verbally out there, and I'll give some more links while you're saying that. So whatever you want to share verbally with the audience, please feel free.
Yeah, so you can visit my website. So it's www.rhonellebruder.com. So RHONELLEBRUDER.com. You can follow me on Twitter, so at Rhonelle Bruder, on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook. It's just at Rhonelle Bruder. Keep it simple. So follow me on social media, visit my website. I have a lot more information about the RISE initiative and the workshops that I'm doing. So, if you're in Toronto, if you're within Ontario and you're local and you're working with an organization that you think would benefit from one of my workshops, definitely reach out, let me know. I'm also a speaker, so I do speaking engagements. So if you feel that you have an audience that would benefit from hearing me, please reach out, let me know.
And that's fantastic. And she will travel, folks, too. She's not just a Canadian, wants to stay in Canada. She will certainly travel. If anyone in the U.S. who's watching this live, or anywhere in the world, if you're watching this, please feel free to reach out. As I said, in the comment section live, I've put up the links, some of the links for getting in contact with her. And if you go to the Dr. Vibe show in about a week or so, the replay of this epic conversation will be posted, video-wise and all audio-wise. And we're going to hold Rhonelle to come back and share some of her early journey, because that should be a book, young lady. That should be a book, I'm telling you. Well, let's do some stuff here. I will give some shout outs to a bunch of people who came on tonight. Herbie, Sonia, Dante, Tourist, Soso Steph, Kente, Ritz Kellogg, Dre, Jada, also Miss RMBA on the Periscope side. I think one or two other people came on that Bobby, Melvin. Like to thank you all. If I have forgotten you, if I've forgotten anybody, it's my head, not my heart. So that.
Thank you.
And
thanks for coming.
Finally, if you want to get in touch with me or some of my contact information, I am Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of epic conversations, and I'm the host of Epic Conversations. If you want to catch replays of epic conversations like this one on video-wise or live stream-wise, go to my YouTube, and in the search engine, put in the space, DR_VIBE space, SHOW. If you want to catch replays of the audio epic conversations, website, the DRVIBESHOW.com. Also, we have it on, let me just scroll a little bit here, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts. Selected audio replays are available at thegoodmenproject.com, WJMS Radio out of New York City, and Mile High Radio out of Denver, Colorado. And you can also catch it on Amazon Alexa. So if you want to just say, listen to the Dr. Vibe show if you have Amazon Alexa, and you will get the latest audio podcasts on that device. I'm a certified empowerment coach, president and CEO of Express Your Vibe Coaching Communications. If you'd like a complimentary session, please reach out to me. You can go to my website, go to the top of my website, and click on Contact the Dr. Vibe Show, and you'll be able to reach out to me via email or via audio message right from my website. I'm on Twitter at DRVIBESHOW. Email address DR_VIBE at the DRVIBESHOW.com. I am a brand ambassador for the only online magazine dedicated to African Americans in food, wine, and travel. The name of the magazine is Cuisine Noir Magazine. Website address is cuisinenoirmag.com. educator.com. If you're a business or entrepreneur and you'd like to get media promotion, I do operate a service called Getting Media Coverage, where I help businesses and entrepreneurs get media promotion so they can elevate their business, product, or service. Yeah, I can do this. I've done this so many times. I don't have to look anymore. It's just like bang, bang, bang. Upcoming stuff with Dr. Vibe. If you are in the Toronto area on February 2nd, I will be appearing on a panel called Black Fathers Loving Their Black Sons, and that's going to be held at the Black Love Symposium at Harbourfront Saturday afternoon, February 2nd. And then the next day in Ottawa, I'm hosting some panel discussions at the National Black Canadian Conference. That's happening. And then at the end of next month, I will be hosting a panel discussion at a Canadian National Fatherhood Conference. And there's some stuff going on in between, but just follow me on Twitter and we'll keep you up to date. If you want to come on the Dr. Vibe show, send me an email. If you have a topic you'd like me to host an epic conversation about, please reach out. Fantastic. Okay. And what I will say, last 4 things I say on my epic conversations. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Next up, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. And finally, block assumptions. And one more thing, aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Thank you, everyone who watched this conversation or going to be watching it on the replay or listening on the replay. God bless, peace be well, keep the faith, and walk good.